Okay, now tonight it's going to be open forum, but we're going to start it a little bit different. If you come across something that's amazing and brilliant, and this is going to be one of our health talks in hopefully the first part of September. I saw a video this weekend, and I study on the weekend. I mean, for fun, I literally get educational videos and watch them on my boat. I'm not kidding. That's sick, okay? So I'm watching this Spontaneous Evolution by Dr. Bruce Lipton. The guy is brilliant, brilliant. But he's correlating, because we can see as a whole that the medical system is defunct. It's obsolete. We know this by looking at not just the headlines, but the statistics from their own journals. Okay, the leading cause of death is medical care. I mean, one of the leading causes of death is the right drug at the right time in the right dosage. So obviously there's something different. What Dr. Bruce Lipton did in this videotape, Spontaneous Evolution, he correlated it that there's actual life cycles to belief systems. And this is just amazing. I'm only going to talk about this for like 5 minutes and we'll open it up for questions, but this is like goosebump stuff. What he did was, on a lifestyle, and this is an example of certain, the lifestyle of certain civilizations, on how they are, there's a growth or a discovery period where oh my God, this is fantastic, I just learned these new techniques, or it's kind of like a child. What he uses is a child discovering things. And then all of a sudden, they come to a rigidity of belief system. So it's kind of like, well, before polytheism, they had animism, where everything had a spirit, everything had a soul. It's more like Native American stuff. You know, the rock had a soul, the soul of the bird was in us, and really, really harmony in the world. Well, they ran into challenges with that because, people came in and killed everything, and, it seemed like the power of the fittest, okay? Well, then polytheism came out, where there's a God for everything. There's God of water, God of sun, and everything else. And that seemed like a great idea, great discovery. And then there's a rigidity of beliefs. A God of air? No, there's no God of air. You can't have that. Okay, so you start saying this. No, there's no God of celery. Okay, so there's a rigidity of beliefs in that polytheistic society. And then what happened? They came up with some challenges, because you could pray to the sun god all day long and it still rained. Okay, so then their society declined. Well, at this point where the society declines and one goes up, there's new belief systems. Well, the human body, and this is going in the monotheistic society, the human body, they used to think, and this is going on Newtonian physics, what Sir Isaac Newton did is he looked at everything as a machine, that you could calculate it, you could predict it. You could even predict the movement of the stars and suns, and in fact he made models of this. And that's how we started to view the body. We started to view the body as a sum of parts. Okay, that the body is cardiovascular and pulmonary and everything else. Now, this is a problem because we took out spirit. We took out that life force that animism and also monotheism had, that there was actually a connection between God and a spirit and a life force in it. Now with this materialistic view, since you're a collection of parts, if the parts break, we can take them out. If the parts malfunction, we can give you a chemical. So that's the industry. Now we're going to expand on this in September and go over the epigenetic control, genetic control, and a lot of the challenges that we're having today with that scientific materialistic view of the body, how it's absolutely not working. So we know that society or the medical world is collapsing. We know that. We can see it. I mean, the whole Obamacare stuff, that's just rearranging chairs on the Titanic. That's stupid. Okay, what we're looking at, I mean, just being here, just studying this stuff, you know that you're on the rise of the next evolution. And the rise of the next evolution means that your thoughts can control it. Your thoughts can control genetic expression, and your view of the body is everything. This is why we're going to explore these three different questions in September. But what I also wanted to show you is that everybody here went to high school. You've seen the picture on the left, right? And that's going on Newtonian logic. that on a reductionist thinking, and this is the whole scientific breakdown, where your body is a body, that's a collection of organ system, which is a collection of cells, which is a collection of atoms. So we reduce it down, and this is how we learn things. And if you're a machine, that would work. But you're not. Since the 20s, we realized that the quantum atom model is the appropriate one. You're thinking it's an empty box, right? Okay. No, what we're finding out is that there's no matter to an atom, that it's vortexes of energy. Okay, so it's vortexes of energy that compose the cells, and those cells are vortexes of energy held in place with thought, which compose the organ systems. This is why under physical, chemical, or emotional stress, you can think yourself healthy or think yourself sick. Isn't that cool? I know. Even though it was like open forum, I had to bring this up. That's why I got affirmation techniques, so you can change your perception of the environment and change this. This is why when we teach technique, do I say the intention of the adjustment is more important than the adjustment? When I come to work, I actually say, make me a conduit of God's healing energy. Have God's power flow from God through me into my patients. So I know that there's an energy aspect to the healing, and sure enough, that's the future. Okay, now, any questions? Oh, I know. Wait till you see those September. Oh my gosh, when we expand on this is going to be fun. Okay. Any questions?
You determine what adjustments you're going to do when we get up there?
Oh, the question is, how do I determine what adjustments that I do when you get up there? What's interesting is I use x-rays as a base. But also, you don't have conscious control of the muscles that run down either side of your spine. They're actually increase in tone under nerve pressure. And typically, they're going to increase tone under the convexity, or the outside edge of the curve. So if your body is racked off to the side, the muscles on the outside portion of the curve will increase in tone. And that's why most people, their body is trying to correct themselves. All I do is I just move it just a little bit, very little bit, about 1 millimeter, and it springs back about 0.5 millimeter, and then that changes how the body corrects itself. It's also on scoliosis. See, what we're learning about scoliosis, in fact, let me get a spine. This is, I know I keep bringing in the September's talk, but on a scoliosis, when you have a bend like this, the muscles on the outside, see, ignorant doctors used to think these are weak. Okay, and I think they're still teaching that, right? Okay, yeah, they're really stupid. Okay, because through intramuscular EMG studies, when you shove a needle in here to check muscle activity, the muscles on the outside of the curve are trying to correct it. They're trying to contract to straighten it up, because your brain views those muscles they should be equal. Now there's little sensors down here governed by the nervous system, and those sensors control the muscles. So if the sensors, or that it's called a joint mechanoreceptor, it's just like a sensor like NASA would have. If that's open, that's going to increase the tone of the muscle to straighten it up. Now here's the wild part, okay, because I teach scoliosis rehab. The way you check to see if this spine can be corrected is you take the spine and bend it. And if it doesn't change, it's pretty much stable. It's going to be hard to fix it. But if you bend it and it does change, that means that's the minimum amount to correct. Now, why do I say minimal? Because we're not doing anything but changing or checking the limit of the structures involved. So what that means is, since these muscles are governed by proprioception, or governed by your view of your body's position in space, if we can change how the mind views the body, we can change proprioception, you can instantly get the maximum correction of a scoliosis without even touching the patient.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, I know! This is the future! Okay, because what we got to do now is I've got to see that patient, I've got to cause inflammation, I've got to give exercises, we've got to change the joint mechanoreceptors, we've got to shoot post x-rays, we've got to give corrective exercises. But if we can step this up a notch and change only proprioception, they walk out of here corrected. Why do I take why do we put every patient through an education process to show their x-rays and to explain this? Why, when I adjust, do I explain exactly what's going on? You know, this is what's for this. That's why you're doing this exercise. Keep it up. Why do I do that? Because if you visualize it, you get a faster correction.
Now, Gary's daughter had two metal rods.
Oh yeah, well, she had scoliosis, and they corrected it when she was about 9 or 10 years old. Mm-hmm. She had her major surgery done. They put 2 rods in.
I know. Well,
Is that good or bad? I guess.
Well, the question was asked. He had a daughter who had a surgery, and they put steel rods in. Now, this is again, we're on the decline, okay, of a defunct medical system that's obsolete. The surgery was developed about 80 years ago. Now, the medical approach, and this is, again, is that a popular system? Yes, but is it an obsolete system? Yes. Their goal is to wait and watch. Has the body compresses? If it compresses beyond a certain number in a certain amount of time, then you refer to the surgeon. So what you'll see is in a little kid, they'll say, no, it's not bad enough yet. Okay? In the future, they're going to say, oh my gosh, you got to go to somebody that can check this. You're going to go to a chiropractor that can change proprioception or mechanoreceptor firings to get this checked, to get it corrected. I had a 5-year-old kid with a 36-degree scoliosis that was progressing. And we actually have them on our website. What's frustrating, 36 degrees at 5 years old. If you put a steel rod in there, does the steel rod grow? No. Oh, you're right, the steel rod wouldn't grow. So you'd have to do a couple of operations, wouldn't you? Okay. Remember, this system is obsolete. It's going out. Okay, this is where the challenges come in when you think about this mechanistic view. Okay, so that 36 degrees had to wear a brace 22 hours a day. Was he a happy kid or a sad? It says miserable. Okay, and remember, we want to change the brain's view of the body. So I told him to get the brace off. We adjusted him, changed his proprioception, got pressure off of the neck area, and it went from 36 degrees to 15 degrees in 6 weeks. Now, the reason it was so fast is because I didn't want to take the post x-ray of this 5-year-old kid, but the mom was so worried because she was panicked by the I almost said barbarians, by the surgeons to say your child's going to die, he's going to be paralyzed, his organ systems are going to be shut down because it's a fear-based system, and that's key. It's a fear-based system. It's not an intelligent-based system. See, in the old model, they would say, everything in here is dangerous. There's bacteria. There's a flu virus coming in. There's cancer coming in. You've got high blood pressure. You're going to die from this. Now, what happens in a fear-based system, and that's our system now, it takes blood from the frontal lobe, which is judgment, okay, impulse control. It's more intellectual aspect. Under fear, it takes that blood and shoves it to the hindbrain for survival. So you don't have complex thought. When you're panicked, do you want to study calculus?
No.
No. You're just thinking of, oh my God, I got to get out of here. What's your name? I don't know. Oh, I'll like my belt buckle. You know. I mean, because you're panicked. So in a fear-based system, you're not supposed to be taught. Thought logically. So when a parent goes in there, you love your kid, okay, and they say, look, your kid's going to die, their organs are going to be crushed, or we got to put this in there, are you going to say, wow, I'd like to get a second opinion? No, this guy's in a position of authority with a white jacket in those kind of conditions with no blood to my frontal lobe, I might submit, okay? And that's our fear-based system. So, I mean, I just got a guy in, 80-degree curve, 80 degrees. And let me just, 90 is straight across. 80 is pretty darn close to straight across, okay? 80-degree curve, 90 days later, he's down to 69 degrees. That's not what he's happy about, okay? He's really happy that he's getting better, but his asthma went away, his headaches went away, his joint pain went away, and he's on his way to recovery, and we took another stress x-ray of him, and his goal now is around the high 50s. I think 58 degrees is his goal. So he's real happy, but I'm not happy with those surgeries. Do I ever see them necessary? If there's a fracture. If there's a fracture and a paralysis, but even then I'd be suspect. I'd be suspect. No, most of the time you cannot take the steel rods out. There's a couple of installations where you can, where they just have a hook that pulls down the lower part of the vertebrae and a hook that pulls down up here. Most of the time they take a hammer and chisel and literally remove the lamina, which is the part that holds the spinous processes, and they cut part of the bone out to make it easier to bend back and twist.
So what are the negatives of having that rod in?
Virtually everything. Okay, it limits motion. It's going to limit stimulus to the brain. It's going to, you got a foreign object in there, so it's going to change your immune system. It's going to change proprioception. It's you know, you're not looking for a really long, healthy, flexible, dynamic life. I mean, in the extreme circumstance, which is phenomenally rare, it may help. Okay, but you've got to try conservative care first, because to remove parts of your bone, remember, this is a defunct, obsolete medical system, okay, that is using fear to base decisions, forgetting that you're based in energy. Okay, so if we use the new, not the Newtonian model, but the new vortexes of energy that is your body, can you change it knowing that that body is not muscles and bones? That it's proprioceptive firings, it's nervous system firings. It has to do, I mean, the average person with scoliosis have ligaments 2.5 times more flexible than normal. Okay, that's a... So what do we do with that? If we know that the ligaments are more flexible, perhaps they're missing some cartilage or some chondroitin, or maybe there's a problem with not a healthy digestion where they can't take the proteins and break them to amino acids. Maybe we have to look at digestion before we look at the scoliosis correction. Maybe we have to look at why there's a limiting factor, or what's happening with that.
What was the cause? What was the cause?
Well, remember, there's a defunct medical system. The most common cause of scoliosis is idiopathic, from the root word idiot. They haven't a clue. Yeah, I mean, traumatically induced just means you got a trauma. But idiopathic is the most common cause.
So somebody that comes in with the rods in, you don't...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, you got to figure the way the body is. So the question was asked, if somebody comes in and they have steel rods, are we still able to work on them? Absolutely. When we talk about scoliosis, that's the one problem with open forum. Otherwise, I'd have like 4 scoliosis x-rays I could show you. Yeah. Okay, but what happens is, the way the normal human body is, from the side you have curves, from the front it's straight up and down. And it's built like this because it needs to be a shock absorber. And that's how the system's laid out. In scoliosis, from the side, there's almost no curves, and sometimes, most of the time, there's even a reverse curve in the neck. Now, they typically only do scoliosis surgery from the 3rd thoracic to about the 2nd lumbar, or a little bit lower. And the reason they do it not much higher than the 3rd is because the vertebral bodies aren't big enough to accept screws, even though the curve might go higher. I know that sounds barbaric, but I've actually seen steel rods going up above here. I've seen bolts connecting C2 to the skull. I've seen the most horrible things you could ever imagine. Okay, so what you do with them is you can't work on where the steel rods are, but you can work above to restore the curve, which is going to decrease the headaches or eliminate them, or help with the sinus issues, or help with digestion, because that's where the brainstem and you know, majority of the nervous system is. And we're going to talk about the curve in the neck being the arc of life. Or you can stabilize the pelvis, because remember, their ligaments are 2.5 times more flexible than normal. So in scoliosis, if they have a pelvic issue, do they have difficult menstrual cycles? Yes or yes. Bowel bladder problems, yeah, absolutely. Prostate issues, absolutely. So you can stabilize the pelvis, and if the rods aren't down here, you can even restore the curve there. The worst I've ever seen is 13 neck surgeries, 7 back surgeries. This one guy has got 4 movable vertebrae, okay, and they're supposed to be 24. So, you know, I mean, there's not much to work with there. But, I mean, I would like to have seen them before. But again, this is an obsolete medical system that's thinking that you're just a collection of parts, that there's no aspect for an energetic system, okay, that your body can't regenerate. Did that make sense? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Since our bodies are intelligent and on the opposite side of on the convexity, your muscles increase tone to try to naturally correct it, why would the course of scoliosis then get worse and worse and worse?
The question was, since the body is intelligent and the muscles on the outside of the curve are trying to correct it, why would a scoliosis get worse and worse and worse? So what controls the firings of these muscles on either side? Say proprioception. What controls the firing in the muscles on either side? Oh, that's right. Your body's position in space. That's so true. So what you have to do is look at what's changing the body's position in space. What causes that? And it's information coming up from the body into the brain. So that connection from the brain to the body is not there. It's missing. It's getting a distorted signal. It thinks that this is straight. Okay, when in reality, if you take a stress x-ray, you can see it. So where does proprioceptive, or let's say balance? Balance comes from three different aspects. Information from the dorsal columns. What that is information coming up from the spine. The second aspect of it is the cerebellum. And the third aspect of balance, okay, is the inner ear, or vestibular ocular system. Now you can function with any two of the three. Now this gets a little bit deep and a little bit technical, but he's a doctor and, you know, he's dealing with doctors that are really not that smart. Okay, so it's going to be a little technical, but you can function with any two of the three. Do the police know this? Yeah, I know. Okay. Because you can function with two of the three. Drugs affect the cerebellum, so what do for the drunk test? They have you close your eyes. You take out the vestibular ocular. If you fall around, it means the cerebellum, and that's where drugs are usually affecting you. Interesting, huh? I know. Yeah, well, don't drink and drive anyway, but at least now you know why. So any two of the three. So to have an alteration in proprioceptive firing, which changes the muscles, which means that there's a problem with perception of the environment, it's usually going to be one of those three. So correct the curve, take pressure off the brainstem, but first do a stress x-ray so you can convince the patient that it can be helped, or you can convince yourself, and then enlist the patient in the care so that they know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what your goal is. And then have an objective measurement that you can do in there at a given period of time. I like 90 days, could be 100 days, could be 5 weeks, depending on whatever your protocols are. And then show them, okay, because the body is designed to be healthy. The body is a brilliant design. Does that make more sense? Yes. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
How does one get rid of gallstones without surgery?
How does one get rid of gallstones without surgery? You got to look at gallstones as the formation of stress, okay, and toxic blood. So you have to reduce the stress and eliminate the toxic blood. And typically, and this is going to sound odd because have you ever actually held a gallstone, or am I the only one?
You must be.
Okay, well, because honestly, I had a rubber glove that was full of gallstones, but when you dissect a lot of humans, okay, you're going to find some of these, and they're interesting because they're not like what you would think. Have you guys held gallstones before? Are they heavy or super light? Ridiculously light. I know. It's almost like you're holding like a hollow cube. And what they are, under visual, or it's called reflective microscopy, where you look at the crystals coming off of it, they're very similar to stress hormones. So it seems that people under higher stress are going to produce certain catecholamines, histamines. They're going to get in there and they coalesce in there. And there's 4 Fs, okay, that denote, this is what again, it's an obsolete medical system. It's going out, so I'm talking old stuff. But they have 4 categories to memorize and regurgitate the most common person that's going to have gallstones. Okay, they're heavy set, they're female, they've had a couple of kids, and they're over 40. In today's society, okay, I know, you're all smiling because you're thinking, oh good gosh, they're stressed to begin with. Okay. Well, what happens is, okay, you can start to decrease the gallstones by keeping a healthy blood. Okay, so you got to do the vegetable juicy and soluble fibers, getting a healthy liver. Don't do anything that toxifies the liver. Let me see, what's the deadliest drug in America today? Heroin, cocaine, or Tylenol? What's the leading cause of liver disorders in this country? Tylenol. How many people are taking Tylenol? There you go. Okay, so having something toxic to the liver is not going to help the liver form it. Now, what the gallbladder does is it stores and concentrates bile. So it actually has a function. So these doctors that are ripping out the gallbladders are just insane because you're going to have decrease in absorption of fat and fatty acids. That means you're going to have an increased rate of cancer and decrease in mental functions. So you can start to dissolve the gallstones. Liver cleanses are a little bit dangerous because you have to clean the intestinal tract first. The gallbladder and the pancreas both drain through the same opening, okay, in the intestine right next to the stomach. It's called the duodenum right there. Okay, and they both drain. The pancreas comes in like this in the duodenum, and the gallbladder drains right through the same opening. If a gallstone gets stuck in there, it can cause pancreatitis and inflammation. So this is a dangerous thing. What we do is you can actually do a soft tissue massage. But first, before that, we check the nervous system. Why? Because the gallstones aren't going to form unless there's stress. Check the physical, chemical, emotional stress, solve that. You can put direct heat, like a moist cloth in the microwave or damp, moist heat on there. And that's going to help loosen up the smooth muscle, which will help relax the contractions in that gallbladder so it'll feel more comfortable. You can increase. Typically, for gallstones as well as kidney stones, you're going to do about a gallon of apple juice a day, which will also cause diarrhea, which will shift your system more to an alkaline basis. And you should see them break up. But, I mean, you really don't want to remove the gallbladder. But those are going to be aspects to know what causes it and to also allow your body to break them up because they're very light. I wish I still had them. I know. I'm a single guy anyway, and if I had a jar of gallstones, I'd really be single. But it's true. They're really light, and they're like hollow. So the body can eliminate them. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, good. Any other? Yes, sir.
How would you personally treat an ACL rupture or tear?
Oh, how would how would I, as a doctor, or a really smart doctor, treat an ACL tear? Well, isn't it fun to learn stuff? Okay, the terrible triad of Donahue. Doesn't that sound cool? Okay, because it is. Well, first, when you're talking about the ACL, he's talking about the anterior cruciate ligament, and they call it ACL just because we're into mnemonics. When the knee bends, okay, and it just opens and closes just like a hinge, kinda. Except when I open and close it, what you can't see is it's moving twice as much on the inside as it is on the outside. Now, on the inside, there's a thing called a medial collateral ligament. This is actually connected to meniscus. On the outside, there's a lateral collateral ligament. Why? Because there's the medial side, there's the lateral side. I know anatomy is really simple. When I learned that, I thought, I could teach this. Okay, so when you have that, now the medial collateral ligament's also connected to the meniscus, and the meniscus is like a heavy Tupperware thing coming in there. Okay, and the heavy Tupperware thing kind of guides the action of the bone on top called the femur. So what happens in the tailbone triad of Donahue, bam, you get hit from the outside. That rips the medial collateral ligament, the medial meniscus, and then the anterior cruciate. Okay, and I know. My sons asked me, why, Dad, can I just say yes or no? Okay. But you got to understand the basics to know the mechanism of injury. So if somebody comes in with an anterior cruciate ligament, you also got to pay attention to the medial meniscus and the medial collateral ligament. You also got to look at the dynamics, at what caused it. So if the anterior cruciate is completely torn, okay, and let's say they're not an athlete, they may be okay without the operation. However, the operation is phenomenal. It may restore. But to do the operation, they're going to actually either reattach the cruciate ligament. If it's pulled away from the bone, they'll just stick a little pin in there. Or they'll take a portion of another tendon, okay, and put it in there. Or they'll take a cadaver tendon and put it in there. I know. So if you remember, you're just a collection of parts. It's a defunct medical system. I know. Okay, so the cadaver tendon, you're getting foreign tissue in your body, you can have an abnormal reaction from that. Taking a tendon from something else, like the patella, you're going to weaken an area of the body to kind of stabilize it. So don't rush into surgery. What I would do is fix the medial collateral ligament, fix the medial meniscus, regenerate the cartilage, help the calf, because the soleus pump, or the flexibility of the heel with the muscle in the back, it's got a calf on it, and that calf muscle has got a gastrocnemius and a soleus in there. You're never going to have a problem with the anterior cruciate unless it's direct trauma, as long as you got healthy mechanics of the foot, the arches of the foot, the calf, the knee, everything. Fix everything around. And then if everything is working correctly, like you got healthy arches of the foot, you got a healthy calf function, you got a healthy medial collateral ligament, you got a healthy medial meniscus, you got everything healthy, you got beautiful nerve supply, and still the knee hurts, then the surgery would probably be an acceptable option.
So would you do that exercise to...
So the exercise, would I do the exercise of swinging the leg in order to regenerate all the surrounding structures? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because what we're doing on the exercise that we demonstrate, imagine if this is the knee, we put a weight on here to open up the knee. And then you dangle the knee. Okay, now this is all within an acceptable range of motion. So you're not straining the anterior cruciate, you're not straining the posterior cruciate, you're not bending the knee, you're not extending the knee, hyperextending the knee. You're in a normal, acceptable range of motion that's not going to irritate the tissue if it's not there. But you are straining by opening that joint up, the joint capsule. And if you strain a ligament or you strain a joint capsule, what does the body do to that? It strengthens it. What does the body do to that?
Strengthens it.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh, you're so right. She's going to teach anatomy from now on. She's got a really cool Irish accent. You'll like it. Okay, so you strain it, it strengthens it. That's why you strain all the structures involved, because you don't want to do a surgery if you don't have to. And then also, too, you got to second guess the MRI. Inflammation can change the picture on the MRI. The MRI is not God. Okay, you know, and they say, oh, it's complete tear. Really, is it? Because I did a push and a pull on the joint and I found some resistance, because that's how you tell if the ACL is torn or not. You know, I'm not sure. Shrink it down, shrink the swelling, you know, let's strengthen the tissue in the area and get a second MRI, and then we'll see. I can't tell you how many times they oh, no, it's not completely torn, there's still a couple of fibers. You know, let's just work on it a little bit more and see if it gets a little thicker. Okay, does that make sense?
Shoulder is the same?
I'm sorry, what?
Shoulder?
Our shoulder's the same. Where an MRI can be distorted if you have inflammation, or if you're doing gentle exercises within acceptable ranges of motion, that it's going to strain the tissue and help it. Yes. Yeah. And that's what all joints are. That's why, like, even when you're working out at the gym, ideally, you're not having a weight with the full range of motion at the extent of the range of motion, and then lifting. Okay, what you want to do if you want to build muscle, you're going to have those muscles a bit closer, and then you can exert full force, full power, very, very slow up, very, very slow down, but not to the full range of motion, because that can damage the joint and it's all constrain the muscles. So, you know, let's just live within our parameters, get healthy, and, you know, not hurt ourselves. Yes, sir.
Effects of cell phones and Wi-Fi on the body, and is there a difference between the two?
Yes, effects of cell phone and Wi-Fi on the body, and is there a difference between the two? Yeah, it's kind of like the studies on genetically modified organisms in the human population. We don't know, and we're not looking into it. Okay, so remember, it's an obsolete medical system. Your body is composed of energy. We know that microwaves can damage tissue. We know that certain frequencies, or electromagnetic frequencies, EMFs, can negatively affect some people. Now, what's frustrating is some of the double-blind studies that they've done are inconclusive. They'll actually have cell phones, and some cell phones have all the electronics removed, some cell phones are active, and they'll give them to people who are sensitive with EMF frequencies, and they'll say, here, this one's, tell me if it's on or off. Okay, and, you know, carry it for a couple of days. Oh, you know, and the data won't show that they can actually affect it. But we're also seeing some studies show a rise in diseases and cancers and abnormal cell from people that are living too close to power lines. but we're not going to see studies about that. We know that close to nuclear plants, even if they're going like in Rancho Seco, up near Sacramento, that they had a 13% drop in thyroid cancers after the plant was shut down. So we don't know if that's from radiation or from the electromagnetic frequencies around it.
So are we concerned with things like Starbucks, McDonald's that have these Wi-Fi signals going in?
Are we concerned with Starbucks or McDonald's that have the Wi-Fi signals that are going around? Not really, because in McDonald's you're going to be dead from the food a lot faster than the Wi-Fi. Yeah, so you know that's you got to look at the differences there. But I mean, look at if the radiation is affecting humans negatively. Okay, which in theory it could. Okay, it really could. So that means you're killing cells faster than possibly you're going to regenerate them. So when we talk about oxidative metabolism, your body kills 1 billion cells a day. You regenerate 1 billion cells a day. If you take in healthy nutrients, you're going to be regenerating 1 billion healthy cells a day. Well, actually 10,000 of the cells you build every day are cancer. Okay, so that's no big deal because you're a cancer-fighting machine. Okay, so when you look at this, if you're exposed to things that damage tissue faster than you regenerate, which is possible with the EMF, I don't know if it's the Wi-Fi, I haven't seen any studies on that, but it makes sense that it would. Okay, then you're killing cells faster than you're building up, and you know it might not be good for you.
So pro or con with supplements?
I like the convenience, and I eat a lot of vegetables and fruit juice. You know, so you know you got to balance your system. You know, I like the convenience of getting in touch, and I answer a lot of emails from around the world, literally, and I use my cell phone and computers all the time.
So they haven't had any studies on brain tumors and stuff like that?
None that are really making the papers. There are some that say that it does increase tumors, but not in everybody and not all the time. But we're bombarded constantly by microwaves and different radiation. When I was testing the x-ray machine back here, we had this tester and it was jumping off the charts because we're bombarded with solar radiation. So I don't know. I mean, it depends. Some people are more sensitive, which means maybe they're more aware. Yes, ma'am.
What causes a heart murmur and can it be reversed?
What causes a heart murmur and can it be reversed? Absolutely, a heart murmur can be reversed, but there's a couple of things that can cause not just a heart murmur, because sometimes, like you've all heard of what the heart sounds like. It goes lub-dub, 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 and this is what you learn. Well, there's actually some where it goes lub-shtub, 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 because the valves close together. Okay. Now this, when the valves close together, and the valves are just shaped like this, it's kind of like a balloon where you go, and then it fills up, okay, and closes. Okay, and what you're hearing when you hear that lub-dub, you're hearing these valves slam together, okay, in the aortic to ventricle chamber, and then slam together in the chambers for the arteries coming out. Okay, so you got this slamming together of joints. Well, in some of the heart murmurs, you're going to get lub-dub, lub-dub. What that is, there's a ligament that goes from the valve to the wall of the ventricle that can be loose. Now, if the patient has a loose ligamentous condition, now what's one of those conditions we were talking about tonight that have loose ligaments? Scoliosis. Good, I forgot. Okay, good. So when you have that, can you have a heart murmur because the ligaments inside of the heart are loose? Yes or yes? And that's typically, you're going to hear mitral valve prolapse or tricuspid valve prolapse. I've seen those get corrected by strengthening the ligaments by changing the diet to where they can digest more proteins. And that's one of the hardest ones, okay, when you get a prolapse of a joint, because you actually have to regenerate a ligament. Okay, so that's a big one. So I've seen that corrected by changing the nutrients, by making sure that the body can break the proteins to amino acids and strengthen the ligaments. On the standard heart murmurs, where they're even just like a cardiac arrhythmia, that one's very easy to fix. And you'll see that the nerve supply to the heart, and this is the rhythm aspect of the heart, is the top of the rib cage area, T1 through T4. Now that happens to be the area that all the muscles that support the head are. So if the head's forward and the shoulder starts to round over, that top of the rib cage area is the nerve supply to the heart. So typically somebody that has cardiac arrhythmias, do they have forward head carriage? Yes or yes? Absolutely. So you restore the curve in the neck, take pressure off of that area, and you're fine. And I had a patient, and I brought her up in another health talk, really sweet gal. She was with me for like 3-4 years, just on a health maintenance. She dropped out of care for about 3 years. So she calls me up. She says, Dr. Bergman, I'm in trouble. And I said, well, what happened? She said she had a cardiac arrhythmia, chest pain, and left arm pain. So doctors, what are they teaching you? Heart attack, yeah, because this is the defunct medical system that's obsolete. Okay, they're not teaching that the body's smart. Okay, they're saying that left arm pain, okay, chest pain, and cardiac arrhythmias, that's going to be heart pathology. Well, she had this symptom and she went to the hospital. Checked her heart, checked everything, she was fine. Okay, then they said, well, we can't let you out of here because we're really concerned that it was some kind of heart and our tests don't show it up. So they kept her at the hospital because this was like 9 o'clock in the morning. She's at the doctor's office at 11. She goes to the regular hospital at about 5. We're going to give you a stress test. So they decide to give her a chemical stress test. So they put a dye in her heart, have her sit in a chair. Well, first the dye in the heart, and they run it through, and they take an angiogram, and they can't see anything. Well, ma'am, we still can't find anything. So now we're going to put a dye in your heart and give you a chemical stress test. A chemical stress test means they put a stimulant in your body, and you're in your chair, and you're shaking like you're working out. Okay, and with the dye in the heart. I'm sorry. This is the system. What's one of the leading causes of death in America? Okay. Can you see the insanity of this? We're going to keep giving chemicals till we find out what's wrong with it. So they say, we found the problem. You got a clogged artery in your heart. We're going to put a stent in there. And so she's panicked. She's scared. Okay, so what happened to the blood in the frontal lobe? It's gone. It's way in the back. She's been in the hospital under authority. Everyone's saying, well, yeah, we think you're done, but we can't find anything wrong with you. Okay, so instead of honest to goodness, okay? So she calls me up. And this is 4 weeks after they put the stent in here and gave her 2 blood pressure drugs and a cholesterol drug. Now, she was drug-free before. Okay, they just couldn't find anything wrong. Her blood pressure was fine. They just wanted to slow the heart down with the blood pressure drug to think that less pressure would be less work on the heart. I'm not kidding. So she calls me up and I say, Nancy, I haven't heard you in like 3 years. How you been doing? Oh, Dr. Bergman, I'm so scared. My chest hurts. My left arm's hurting. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, do me a favor, okay? Nancy, just put your right ear on your right shoulder. Okay, she goes, and I said, now how does your arm feel? She said, hey, my arm feels a little bit better. But, I got this chest pain. I said, when was the last time you ate? She said, about a half hour ago. I said, did you have anything to drink? No. I said, do me a favor. Put your right shoulder closer to right hip. Okay, now I'll hold on the line. You just tell me. Okay, so she leans up. Hey, it's easier to breathe. My chest feels better. And I said, okay, Nance, just hang in that position and you'll be okay. Okay, now we're talking crazy because all the nerves that supply the arm come out of the neck. If the lights went off in here, would we flip out or go check the switch first? We would go check the switch first. Okay. So we have to look at the most common things first. She works at an office, her head's forward all the time, choking the nerve supply off to the arm. Leaning over here opens up the nerve supply to the arm. Her arm felt better. You irritate the diaphragm on the left, which happens to be where the stomach is. That's going to simulate chest pain. Okay, it's also where indigestion and everything else, angina, is a very common cause of that. So if you lean over, you're giving the abdominal contents some room to move away from the diaphragm, causing the diaphragm to not irritate and decrease in the chest pain. Go on, say it with me. Wow. I know. I did that with a phone. Okay, what time is it, sir?
7:45.
Excellent. Okay, good. Next week, okay, and this is going to be G-rated. Okay, but it is going to be really interesting. Okay, it's got passionate romance for life, healthy sex secrets. I will teach you anatomy and physiology that's amazing. And I'm going to show you the health secrets that Jack LaLanne used to use that are amazing. Okay, so thank you very much.